Right, let's bring Michael and Derek into the screen. I'm just handling a bit of technology. Just bear with me. There we go. Bang. Right, that's all three of us in full swing. So the boat isn't sailing this morning, but the skeet net is. Michael, welcome.
Good morning, Jed. Good to be here with you.
And Derek, live from Lancashire. Okay?
Morning, how are you?
Well,
good?
Yeah, good. It's been a fairly uneventful week. Not much has happened in the news, just the odd U-turn, and we've had a date set for September. We've had the Manx gas propaganda. Crikey, what's caught your eye, Michael?
Well, one of the things that I think has gone a little bit under the radar is that the Isle of Man government has belatedly accepted the science when it comes to the the intervals of the vaccine doses for Pfizer, and I think it is good that they have finally belatedly changed their mind here. As I've said many times before, converts are always welcome. It would have been better if the Isle of Man government had listened to the science 2.5 months ago, but better late than never.
And we are, looking with with hope that by September everything will be open for business. But let me just run this scenario by you. We're looking at September, and Boris Johnson is telling everyone in the UK that it's going to be on the 21st of June. That's right, Derek, isn't it?
It is, but then again, don't forget our schools went back this week over here. If we end up with the same sort of multiplication effect that's happened on the Isle of Man, we're going to be looking at September 2022 before anything changes. It really is just impossible to call at the moment. I mean, the UK's well ahead on its vaccination programme. My wife had hers yesterday. They certainly are getting through. You talk to more people that have had the vaccination than haven't had the vaccination over here. And that's going to be the real game changer. But for me, right now, if they're moving into a future strategy of mitigation as opposed to elimination, which would seem to be the sensible thing to do now at this stage, I would say that the easiest thing for the Isle of Man to do is to become part of the United Kingdom bubble and just go with whatever is happening in the UK within Lancashire and Merseyside for the sea links and everything, and just go with that because there's a few MHKs have broken cover this week in terms of talking about that economic impact that lockdown and isolation is having. We've got to break out of this as soon as possible now. So I'd personally be looking at running the numbers on what that situation looks like and look at it as an option. But it's this isolationist that's going to kill the place if they're not very, very careful at all.
Well, Michael, you're a numbers man and you're well up on the vaccines. I thought, the vulnerable and those, say, over 50 should be all done and dusted by May, and I think that is documented. So why not look at opening the borders after that once all those people that are perhaps at risk, have been jabbed?
Yeah, you make a compelling point, and on that, it's worth noting that next week, on current projections, it seems likely that the Isle of Man will receive its 45,000th dose of the vaccine, and that 45,000 number is important because that would have essentially been one for every single vulnerable person on the Isle of Man. That is, people aged over 50 plus people with pre-existing comorbidities and so on, and so we're almost there, and so I'm pretty optimistic. But you make the broader point about what is the restrictions, and I think it's fair to say that the people of the Isle of Man have willingly, perhaps not happily, but certainly willingly, endured a lot of restrictions over the last year, and we've endured those restrictions to keep the metaphorical grandma alive, to keep the vulnerable alive, and that made sense. People are enduring these barriers on life to keep other people alive, to save lives. Now, once the vulnerable have been vaccinated, that rationale disappears. That doesn't make any sense in a month's time when everyone should have been vaccinated. Actually, it doesn't make much sense next week when everyone should have been vaccinated. But unfortunately, the government, messed up this palaver of a vaccine rollout, and so we'll have to wait a little bit longer. But notwithstanding, I think you're right. Once people are vaccinated and protected with the vaccine, these barriers, such as we spoke on Tuesday about Mel Jane Carr. She has a daughter who's currently 16, hasn't seen the daughter since she was 14, and what we're going to keep on. Why would we keep her from seeing a daughter once the vulnerable are protected?
Well, am I being a bit harsh here? We've got how many COVID cases? It could be over 500 now.
Currently 1,091.
So that's from last year, isn't it? But I think
so that's the total confirmed cases, and currently, according to the government, as of yesterday, 644 active.
Okay, so 644, and unfortunately, we have got a small number in the hospital, haven't we?
12, yeah.
12, yeah.
And we don't really know about those 12 in the hospital. Have they got underlying medical conditions? Or are they, someone... Mind that cough, Michael. Are they someone who's plucked out of thin air? And this is what I'm getting at, is that really, with all those people who are down as suffering from COVID, it's a minority. It's a small percentage that are in a life-threatening state, okay? So surely by May, we can have all the vulnerable people eliminated and done. And why can't we just look at...
Vaccinate.
Synchronise, yeah. Sorry about that.
We don't want to eliminate.
The risk eliminated. But why can't we have that June 21st date that synchronises with the UK? Because just imagine what would happen, the nonsense, if... Boris goes with it and says, right, okay, we're going to run with it now, as he wanted to originally last year, the herd immunity, which was his advice that drove him, a year ago. They're going to go for it. They aren't going to U-turn on that date, are they, Derek?
I don't know. I think there's every likely they would do. This government skips between sound bites on a regular basis. So I don't think we can. I certainly wouldn't be down the book he's put in a few £100 on a 21st of June lifting of restrictions by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think we're out of the woods yet by any means. But as I said before, it makes sense for me now to look at, as an option, aligning the island with the UK as a sort of common travel area, if you will. Because they ain't going to beat it this time. The way this has escalated, when you consider the measures that were in place with the border restrictions, the border controls, it's as if they never existed. It has gone absolutely ballistic, hasn't it? It's just incredible the way that it's spread through the community, the extent that it's spread through the community. But again, going back to the sort of overall COVID deaths and so on, I think I've previously related the story of my brother-in-law, 85 years of age, goes into hospital for a heart procedure, catches COVID whilst he's in hospital, asymptomatic, has had the jab. Had he died in hospital from his heart issue, which he didn't, thankfully, he's out and making a convalescing now, he would have been a COVID death. If he dies within the next 2 weeks, he will be a COVID death. We've got to understand how many people are actually being killed by COVID who have actually been perfectly fit and well and have actually succumbed to it, or have had underlying health conditions where COVID has exacerbated that condition and they have died of it. The fact that you are 88 or 8 years of age and you die in hospital or at home because you've had a COVID diagnosis does not make you a COVID death. There is there's been a fug around these figures, which I think has completely skewed the picture. When you look at the actual numbers, they are minute. You don't want to catch it. You don't want it to kill you. You don't want long COVID. There's no doubt about it. It's a dangerous disease. But practically, in real terms, have we taken a proportionate approach to it? I don't know. It's one that's going to come out in subsequent inquiries and doctorates that are done in due course on this very unique period in history, isn't it?
Well, Michael, you might agree with me, but I think on the Isle of Man, the impact of COVID on people economically and mentally probably just as great as the physical effects, possibly.
Well, it's difficult to compare the two because they're on different dimensions, and so the physical death, relates to 25 people passed away and were killed with the COVID last year. And so I would not want to get into the case of trying to balance that against the economic or the mental health and so on. But rather, we've got to manage both dimensions, all three dimensions, or all the dimensions, right? There's stopping people from dying from the coronavirus is important, but other people will have different sensibilities about the different risks. So, for example, in the United States, almost 600,000 people have died with the coronavirus. Of those 600,000, 288 have been children. Right, so it's a tiny fraction, and all of those people had huge and significant comorbidities and other very serious physical illnesses. Right, and so even within, when you consider the impact of the coronavirus, the risk to different demographics will be wildly different, and so that's why it's, I think, really difficult to make the risk to Jed Power even is different to the risk to Michael Joseph, which is a difference to Howard Quayle, who, it appears that Howard Quayle and yourself, Jed, both had the virus in the past. Therefore, you are incredibly unlikely to be afflicted a second time. So imposing the same restrictions on you as to Michael Joseph, who, as far as we know, has never had the thing, doesn't necessarily make sense in a modern society where the situation is simply different.
It's interesting. I mean, I keep going on about the change in diet, alcohol intake, mental stress, financial stress that has taken its toll on the island. But we'll never know those outcomes. I just wish the supermarkets could somehow liaise with public health, because I'm understanding that the sale of alcohol in the various outlets has skyrocketed. We're talking Christmas sales. Okay, that's the level, and you think, well, what's the impact going to be there? Is it going to be more domestic violence? Is it going to be diabetes? There are all these little spin-offs. In addition to the economic stress that so many have undertaken. Now, Michael, if you step outside your front door, you're going to see a big shiny ship there, aren't you?
Well, if I was allowed to, I'm only allowed to step outside my door for essential journeys, and so I might have to just look out the window.
So we've seen the news.
What a pedant!
We've seen the news, Derek.
Well, I don't want to go to jail for 4 weeks. Look at that! I don't want to do that.
Well, hang on, don't put jail and steam packet and boats in the same kind of proximity. It could raise all kinds of questions, and there are all kinds of questions. Look at the Tynwald Order paper for the questions for Tuesday the 16th of March. Now, I'm going to try and use a bit of technology and pull some of the questions up onto the screen. Derek, you've had a chance to have a little muse. What are your thoughts?
Well, people start asking the questions that they should be asking all year, really, aren't they? You're starting to see a decent degree of holding to account. But surprise, surprise, we're only 6 months from an election. Isn't it very, very odd timing that this is now where the taps are turned up? The job of a backbencher is to continue to pester, nag and bite government all the time in the absence of an effective opposition. So I'm pleased that it's happening, but I think if you actually analysed question papers over the last 25 years, you would see the same pattern. This is Manx politics. This is what happens, and whether anything comes of it, well, I highly doubt it, to be honest with you. Nothing ever changes, does it? That's the truth of the matter.
Well, I've put the questions up on the screen. You can't see them, but I think you might have had sight of them before. So we've got Claire Barber, who I think she would strike fear into the man in the chair, because she is very, very smart, very slick. And she's asking why the travel notification isolation requirements document in respect of the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company was unenforceable, and what advice has been provided to resolve this. And Julie Edge, she's been firing them in, all kinds of questions. And if he will establish an independent review of the COVID-19 outbreak was linked to a case amongst workers of the steam packet, and what delays were there in reporting the Kent COVID-19 variant present on the island and updating the symptoms list and any reasons for delays. So she's on it there. I advise anyone to look at the paper and tune in on Tuesday morning, because we have all this business that goes on, Michael. If you're not listening, and if you don't have a chance to catch the newspaper, or other news agencies don't kind of choose to report the sexy stuff, it all gets kicked into the long grass.
Yeah, well, it really quite surprises me that the politicians themselves don't put in more effort to disclose to their bosses, the public, about what they're doing. So we enjoy reading Rob Callister and his weekly blogs, which has a wonderful Mr. Smith Goes to Washington sort of feel to it, of how he picks up his clothes from the dry cleaner or whatever it is from week to week, and it's an interesting read. But it would be impressive to see them, do more to I guess to share with the public, share with their bosses, what they've been doing. I live here in Douglas. I have received in the post or in the physically just one communication from members of the House of Keys, and that was from Martin Perkins and Daphne Kane, who apparently had their annual calendar mistakenly delivered here to Douglas rather than to where they are up in Laxey. And so it's, I've literally not a single document of any sort has ever come in the postbox from absent Anne Corlett or Chris Thomas, the other members here.
Just got a couple of comments appeared up on the screen, and yeah, I think from Alan, I think many people have lockdown booze syndrome. I can relate to that, and nothing ever changes elbow cough. So true. That's someone echoing Derek's comments before. So you just mentioned Daphne Kane, and I'll just pull something up on the screen. She has got an interest in cannabis. And what plans has the department to seek an amendment of the law to reclassify cannabis as Class C, and a question about it being introduced for prescription drugs on the island. So again, that topic raises its head. Is it a bit of a populist electioneering, or has this issue gone quiet, Derek? I've not really been keeping track of this one.
Oh, you know what? I'm sick of the whole cannabis debate, to be honest with you. From early in my service, I was an advocate of just legalising the goddamn stuff for the amount of harm that it causes. Try and keep it out of the hands of youngsters if you can. There's some medical evidence there where it's not particularly conducive to the younger brain. But as a prescription, under controlled circumstances where it can be dispensed in the correct tincture, for somebody who has MS or some sort of pain or whatever, where it can provide relief. This is the 21st century. If it's ostensibly safe, then why on earth aren't we just getting on with it? It's again a great opportunity for the Isle of Man to lead the world on these things, or certainly be an early adopter. And what are we seeing? We're just seeing that inertia that continually exists. So no, fair play to Daphne. She's asking some good questions. I did pick up on one that she mentioned earlier on with the tragic incidents in Kent recently, and the arrest of a serving police officer in the murder, and talk about safety and so on, safety of women, and saying how much safer the Isle of Man is, but always wear running shoes. I thought that was a little bit offside, really. The majority of men are, here's some breaking news, decent, chivalrous people who would, defend women to the dying breath if they were in trouble. So whether it's the UK or whether it's here, it is a minority that spoils the circle. And I certainly wouldn't want to see, as in some sectors of political life in the UK, some sort of anti-men rhetoric calling for curfews for all blokes to keep women safe generating. So that's just a bit of an aside. But no, fair play, Daphne. Just keep kicking the can on that one, because eventually they will capitulate, and it'll be spliffs and cake all round.
Well,
hopefully.
they've blown the blow opportunity now, Michael. I'm going to ask you.
Well, just on that, I think Derek raised a good point in that it seems to have been a police officer who was allegedly, kidnapping and murdering the alleged victim there. Forgive me. I don't know how many times I'm supposed to say alleged until the bastard's convicted, so forgive me for that. Second of all, it seems to have been police who are telling women to stay indoors. And third of all, it seems to be police who are telling the Reclaim the Street protesters that they should not be going ahead with their march, their COVID-safe march in the next few days. So really, we don't need to put a curfew on police, on men rather. We just need to put a curfew on the police.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because I mean, ultimately, the police are there to keep people safe in whatever respect, and I mean, I get the march thing, because let's just not spoil it if we possibly can with regard to the super spreader events. The other bits, yeah, I mean, we're still seeing the uplift in policing again here in the UK after it was decimated under the Theresa May government. They're still trying to catch up with 20,000 new posts, and that's just really to stand still, let alone anything else. So there's a bigger societal debate to be had about the objectification of women, the risk that they're put under, and I don't think it by any means sits at the hands of the police in its entirety. It's a bigger social issue.
It's fair to say, that there's a woman murdered every 3 days in the UK, and it's really unfortunate that this particular case has grabbed the headlines. I think you can draw your own interpretation of why that is, but this isn't just a one-off. This is happening all year round, and domestic violence is a horrific problem. I'm not quite sure where we are statistic-wise on the Isle of Man. I'd love to see some raw data about the effect of COVID and lockdown, and these are matters that we've discussed in the past, Michael.
Yes, that's right. So last year, where the Chief Constable here in the Isle of Man revealed that there'd been a 140% increase in domestic violence contacts. Of course, not all of those will include an arrest or prosecution, but certainly a big increase in the number of people called out. I saw just a couple of days ago that Victim Support Isle of Man also forecast an increase in domestic violence, and that is such a tragic situation. And we've got to be very frank that the perpetrators, throw the book at them, because this sort of malicious activity is obviously a crime of evil. You can't accidentally domestically abuse someone. This is deliberate, malicious, evil activity, and the perpetrators can go right in hell for all I care. And so, in that sense, we've got to remember that, these I think across 800 years ago really invented the idea of a fair trial, and a big part of that fair trial was that individuals would be convicted for the offences that they committed. That the sins of the father do not accrue to the son, to borrow a biblical phrase from 2,000 years ago. And so these sort of, essentially British invented and Christian, inspired ideas are more important now more than ever, because we've got to use them so that the people who are responsible are held accountable, and to take strong action against those people who do the wrong thing.
And let's hope we've got the resources to deal with it. And these scary headlines about, there's 50 less police on the streets aren't actually correct. But anyway, I just want to ask you, Michael, about the cannabis. You're an Australian bloke. Was it just like
barely? I've been here. Actually, it's funny you should say that, because this week coming will be my 10-year anniversary.
I know.
I think I've lost my right to call myself Australian. Time ago now.
What I'm getting to, I mean, it's you will have grown up in Australia, okay? So,
Correct, yeah.
Was the marijuana plant? Was it like just growing on every street or in every garden?
Really. So look, I'm a bit of an outlier there in that although certainly I know people growing up. I think I knew people who would smoke marijuana or weed as we would call it as a kid. I've never even smoked a cigarette, let alone weed or anything harsher. And so in that sense, I'm not as a personal story, I'm not particularly representative there, in that I think there are a lot of people who have, and I have some personal issues there that I don't want to use it for them myself, but I find it difficult to justify putting people in cages because they have, and so it's really quite such a sad waste of human potential to be locking up people for possessing marijuana, because theoretically, they are not just the offenders, they are also the victims of the crime. If we have the view as a society that marijuana harms you, which it must be if we're arresting people, then the person who has the possession charge is also the victim, which is a bit of a weird crime. And if we have the view that they are being harmed by the cannabis, then we should be giving them help, not criminality.
The popular opinion on the screen, we've got the comments on the screen. So yeah, cannabis could transform our tourism industry instantly. It should be decriminalised. It's nothing compared to the damage caused by alcohol. Look at Douglas 2 AM at the weekend. And Jack says, yeah, 100% re-cannabis. So I think we're kind of looking in the same direction there. But just tell me, what direction are Manx Gas looking in? That's another one of your neighbours as well, isn't it, Michael? You've seen was it a propaganda video saying that this is all the government's fault? There's been a U-turn and we're going to hang on to your 93 quid.
I feel like in that situation, from their marketing or PR department, was given a chunk of money to say, hey, go do something on social media and produce this video, because it had these beautiful backdrops and it was all nicely edited and so on.
Yeah.
But there was no real reason for that to be in a video. And so there was no one from Manx Gas who would sit in front of it. There was no one in, there's no visual content in the video. And so, having worked in public relations departments for big companies in the past, I've seen this sort of thing happen, right? But what would be much more impressive is, really someone from Manx Gas should come on here, Jed, have a chat to you, answer the tough questions as a I don't know if you call yourself an independent journalist or an independent entertainer, but certainly a small alternative outlet. It was all a bit weird. But Derek might want to talk more about the content and the detail there.
It's got to be spoofed, hasn't it? That one, it's begging for it, Derek.
It's crying out for it. It's crying out for, like I said, a downfall sort of voiceover. I mean, this isn't the first time that Manx Gas PR and comms has fallen short of the mark. It's like a petulant child saying, well, we've done our bit and we're keeping our ball now. For goodness sake, let me just give you a bit of PR advice. And I think I am qualified to actually give it. Do the decent thing. Give the people the 93 quid after you've been ripping 9.9% out of the back of it. Government's fault, I grant you. Just do the decent thing. Give everybody the 93 quid at the odd, then get on the moral high ground. Because at the moment, you're acting like a petulant child. You're part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And I get your pressures on your shareholders, and that if you've been given this 9.9% golden egg, they're going to expect you to rip the back out of it as much as you possibly can. But there comes an ethical point in business where you've got to consider what you're doing and just do the right thing. So there's the thought for today on the Derek Flint School of PR, Marketing and Communications. Whether you listen or not is up to you. But I think you'd see an awful lot of very grateful Manx people if you would do. Certainly compared to the energy I'm paying over here and what I'm paying for gas, it's absolutely scandalous.
Well, the ball is well and truly back into the Tynwald court in the future. I think Chris Thomas is putting a motion forward, which is based, I think, a lot of it on the hard work of Barry Murphy, so things will be rewritten there. But I was musing about the fact that when gas comes into the island and our, Manx Utilities power station sort of get the gas at a market rate, and then the rate that the Manx Gas is fired out to the customers is, I believe, it's over 150% higher, and it's the same stuff. So it's not a level playing field at all. Right, Michael, what was I going to ask you about? Elections. The elections have been pushed back to July. Are you sensing...
So these are local council elections. Were scheduled for April the 22nd, now July the 22nd or 23rd or thereabouts.
And are you sensing that the general election in September could be pushed back?
I have no information on that. I don't know.
Derek?
Oh, sorry to give you a crappy answer to your question.
I think you've got to look at there being a likelihood of it. Whether it's the right thing to do or not, I don't know. but I think there's a likelihood of it. Certainly, if Howard is talking about September as the earliest date that everything starts to be de-restricted in its entirety, it's a very, very interesting dilemma, to be honest with you. I don't know. I think we've got an awful lot of questions to ask around that at the moment in terms of the execution of democracy, in terms of the way it's being done, because it's not healthy. People are looking for change, perhaps more than they have been. I still think there's a degree of malaise with regard to Manx politics, but I think there is certainly an increased wokeness and awareness of some of the issues that are happening. Just want to touch on one thing though, Jed. You mentioned the big shiny boat outside Michael's window before. We just sort of glossed over that. I hope people are aware that the boat isn't sailing at the moment due to COVID-related issues. Now, that would appear to suggest that COVID restrictions is having some issue on crewing. Now, all right, the MV Arrow is still sailing. We can still get our supplies for Tesco and M&S in via that. But that's actually quite a big deal. Obviously, international maritime regulations require certain levels of crewing, certain specialists on board, firefighters, masters of the watch, navigators, and this, that, and the other. But I think it's just flagged up a real vulnerability here in terms of the island's lifelines and people being able to get on and off and freight to get on and off. I think it's a story we should watch with interest this week and see how many times it is happening, because we've managed for 12 months without a glitch in the twice-a-day sailings, which in my humble opinion could have been halved, and all that money that's been saved, environmental impact could have been minimised. But we've managed quite well. And then suddenly we have this bit of a glitch in terms of how the packet has been interpreting the directions with regard to isolation and so on. And suddenly we have a problem. Funny old thing that, isn't it?
Bit of posturing, maybe.
Well, fortunately, the MV Arrow is stepping in to fill the breach, so freight should be, while minorly disrupted, she'll be able to continue for the next foreseeable future.
Well, just going back to on the screen, Bonzo has contributed about cannabis legislation, and the word is it won't be allowed until the UK allows it. References to Alan Bell, who had a go but got battered on that one, and there's a reference to Priti Patel, who's quite a fierce character, as we know. So I'm just wondering about the elections. Are they going to be pushed back? It would be a good defensive strategy if you wanted to get re-elected. That when the election does take place, it could be spring next year, who knows, and everything's hunky-dory by then. At the moment, I'd say that if there was a popularity poll, Isle of Man government is going to be on the back foot, and hence a lot of backbenchers are breaking ranks. So if you get a chance to look at Hansard from the last session, it's really worth a good read. Certainly the likes of Bill Shimmons referring to a month of blunders, Daphne Kane referring to the famous flip-flop Saturday. There's a lot of criticism, and this latest barrage of questions going in for next Tuesday are trying to unpick the policy and the decisions that were made in the last month. Would you say, Michael?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of people who are upset and disappointed, especially because these same people were saying, at the time, hey, we need to be careful, and it's no good for just being hindsight Harry, but rather, as we said, you can look back on our video here on February the 19th. We spoke quite openly. Release the science, be open and honest about it, and stop with this extremist talk from the government where, you can either lick lampposts or be under house arrest. And the prudent thing, as we said at the time, and as you and I were doing at the time, Jed, is wear a mask and to reduce the risk to those around us. But unfortunately, the government has abdicated its policy, its responsibility of community leadership, and because they only focused on what they could legislate rather than what they could persuade, I think the Isle of Man is in a difficult situation today.
Very, very true. So the eyes are on the finish line in September, and the borders hopefully will be open. What kind of tourist industry will we have then? We'll have a sector that has been dormant for 2 years. The hotels have had no investment. I think the life will have been sucked out of anyone who's in that industry. It's going to be really tough to pick the ball up, and then we hit winter. I mean, any solutions to make some rapid money quickly? Derek?
I think it's going to be difficult because, like you say, I think the best of the season is going to be over. And without a doubt, a lot of people are readjusting, both in the UK and elsewhere, where they are, accepting that things have changed and the businesses are closing. It's something like, I think it was something like 12,000 pubs are likely to go on the back of all this. On a more positive note, we've got 2 pubs in our village. A mile up the road, there's another 3. One that has been closed, which was closed pre-COVID, is actually just been bought out and is going to reopen. So there are some positive signs there in terms of what people want to do. But I think the biggest risk is that people want some heat in their bones. I was very jealously talking to a colleague of mine who's just been appointed superintendent in Turks and Caicos yesterday after an illustrious career with Leicestershire Police. 24 degrees, palm trees, and it was just idyllic. I have a feeling that people are going to want to go places like that rather than the windswept Isle of Man. I love the Isle of Man, but you've got to accept that it's a niche offering. It really is. It's warm for a few days a year. It's great. TT is banging, fantastic. Golf offering is amazing. There's some of the best sea bass fishing in Europe off the East Coast, I understand, which I think is a very unexploited market. Great for walking. Supercar tours, motorbike tours, not really welcome, to be honest with you. You get that loud and clear off some of the comments on social media. So what's left? Because you can go to a nice 5-star spa hotel from here within 45 minutes. You can be in the wilds of Scotland within 3 hours. So why would you go to the Isle of Man? That's the question that needs asking. This is where, if I was Angela Byrne, as head of tourism, the question I would be now asking is, why are people going to come to the Isle of Man? What's special about us? Why are we not gathering the numbers that we should be doing? I don't think anybody's ever asked that question.
Well, maybe it's the direction which we face, but you can guarantee that when things are sorted out in the UK this summer, folk will be looking for a break, but they may not be tempted to go abroad for various reasons, increase in air travel and a feeling of perhaps not the safety that you had before. But Michael, I hope you're with me on this. I think that, say, when September comes, we need to take advantage of this like VE Day vibe that's going to be in the UK. And can we introduce really exciting attractions such as, say, almost like free boat travel, a tenner for a foot passenger ticket. Come here, you get 4 pints for £10 as well. Can we have a subsidy on lower priced alcohol? Because let's not beat about the bush. People are going to want to party, aren't they? What else can we do over the winter months?
So I agree that people, once they're allowed to travel, some people will. And so I think you'll see across a whole economy, a bunch of people. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make in looking at the impact of COVID is thinking that everyone is impacted the same. And so there are some people who are doing it really tough, and there are some people who have been saving huge chunks of money because they're not spending some. And so that is, they've had maintained employment but reduced expenditure over the last year and a bit. And so come September, I find it really difficult to imagine Manx taxpayers subsidising English holiday makers. I would, if the Manx taxpayer is going to subsidise anyone, it should be subsidising Manx families, not English holiday makers.
Well, the revenue does come back though into the economy. I think that's absolutely right, and it's jobs.
I'm sure that some tourist operators would benefit from it. I accept that, but taking £100 off the Manx taxpayer and giving it to English people going on holiday, even if they spend some of it back here into, on your golf courses or on your restaurants or accommodation. I don't think that's the right economic thing to do, and so that doesn't make sense.
What about something as simple as the reducing a tariff on home-produced alcohol? So say, Oakles, Bushies, the local brews have some sort of incentive, a subsidy that will furnish the pubs, with extra trade. It could attract business. I can't see any problem with that, other than there might be some, health issues on the sidelines and what have you. But I think we've maybe got to look at that, because what else have we got to bring people over? Why do people go to Europe on stag do's and booze ups and what have you? Quite often they go into Eastern Europe because of the cheap booze.
So
in cold weather.
The Isle of Man has signed up just last year in 2019. It re-extended. I think you'll find the customs duty. So I don't think you can fiddle around with duties on such things. The Isle of Man government did previously and does continue to have, I understand, an exemption to charge lower VAT on accommodation and holiday and a tourist accommodation than across, and so like those sort of things are not necessarily possible. And I think it'd be better to talk about the realm of the possible than the realm of the illegal. And so fiddling around with beer duties and so on sounds difficult, especially since the Quayle government signed up to be in a customs union with the UK back in early 2019. And therefore, I think that the ability to do such things is very tightly restricted.
I'd argue that, actually, because when you look at our dead in the water OFT, department, and you look at the disparity in competition across the Isle of Man and public versus private and what have you, I can't see an issue with some assistance given, say, to something as simple as the production of alcohol products on our island. Derek, I can't see that.
Duty set at £28.55 per litre of pure alcohol for beer, spirits, wines, etc. Which are, and obviously we do have some significant producers in terms of breweries, distilleries, forage and vintners as well. There's quite a burgeoning industry there now. And I had this conversation when I was looking at the distillery side of things with government in terms of whether or not there would be some way of offsetting the disadvantages in terms of export with regard to transport costs by some reduction in duty. And it's just a non-starter. One of the other things which I think we've discussed in the past, Jed, was the possibility of making the Isle of Man a duty-free route, because that's going to get people on the boats from Merseyside or whatever to come over. Oh, we'll go. It's a duty-free route. We'll have a waft around Douglas, then go back on the boat and get some cheap fags and booze on our departure. But this is where people need to understand that there's independence and there's independence. The island is still very much tied into the union with the United Kingdom. It is a crown dependency, and various things are set for a reason. And there's no clarity over what can and can't be broken. You pay 5% VAT on trades for domestic purposes. We don't over here. I think it's a banging idea because it kills the black market and the cash in hand jobs, because there's no incentive to do it anymore. So that was okay, but doing alcohol duties isn't okay. And there's also the moral and ethical reasons around it as well, in terms of the health side of things. We've already got that 80,000 alcoholics clinging to a rock moniker. Do we really want to actually perpetuate that? Don't know.
Michael, you've got a view on that. We've got the message on screen from Faden Folds, and I do like the tone of this. Are we subsidising? Are we talking about subsidising booze for tourists? It's getting quite desperate, and sums up how little we have to offer.
Correct.
You are right. You're
Correct.
Absolutely right. Let's look at the bigger picture. But we can't build the all-weather bobsleigh attraction or whatever it is coming down the Snaefell Mountain, or even maybe repair the Laxey Wheel. Michael, what's your view?
Look, I think that these sort of things where you fiddle around with duties or taxes or whatever, it can only ever be sugar on top. And the best thing to do is to allow people to invest in different bits and pieces to create opportunity here. So, for example, we talked a little bit about Douglas Quay earlier, but right now, what is now the crumbling nuisance building on Douglas Quay is currently it's a registered building, and therefore no one's allowed to develop it.
That's changed. It's up for sale. That whole side is up for sale with planning permission. It's been sorted out. 750 grand if you're interested.
So I can tell you, because I was chatting with the owner of it yesterday. The property is still under the restricted building. It is for sale because the guy can't do anything with it, right? And so if you go to kelproperties.im, you can read the story in quite some passion and some detail.
Which bit's for sale then? Because I know the owner as well quite well,
So
I thought they got permission for the whole lot.
No. So
my bad in that.
So let me give you I'll look it up as I chat to you right now, and I can read it to you.
I know he's had all sorts of problems with it. I thought they'd got through it, mate. My bad. I'll look it up afterwards.
Yeah. So as he says on his website right now, after they purchased the building, the Isle of Man Government Planning Department just informed us, the owners. So sadly, our development plans have been thwarted. We await, however, another developer to take it forward if there is one who wishes to do so. And so, yes, so there were proposals, right, but they were never approved, right? And so here's an opportunity right in the centre of Douglas, quite a sensitive and nicely designed building, and it was thwarted. And so that would have been a great opportunity for someone coming across, to add to the library of Douglas Quay. Could have added, a restaurant or a cafe or bar or whatever it is on the ground floor, which would have, not necessarily a tourist attraction in itself, but would have added to the livelihood of that community. But we couldn't, because someone said that nuisance building is a registered building and a heritage to the island. And there are benefits to that. Well, now we get nuisance building is protected, but there are costs, and that is the fact that there's less people having jobs and less tourists coming over and less families having a home to grow up in.
Well, that area compared to the bomb site that is Douglas at the moment, where we've got shop windows that are empty, we've got the roadworks that are going on and on and on and on. That area is critical, isn't it? I mean, that is really something that when it's all lit up and it's nicely paved and we've got restaurants, it's a good place to be. And really, that should be our entertainment centre. Maybe one day all the other attractions can gravitate that way and maybe populate the mess which is on the other side on South Quay, excluding your place, Michael.
You're not my place, Dan, if you thought it was worthwhile. But the point being is that we have a whole bunch of sites there in central Douglas that are literally sitting in ruins. Not even exaggerating. There's literally crumbling bricks there. The walls are not standing. There's no roof on anything there. It's all literally crumbling. And this is the sort of stuff that we'd be doing. And it would not just be good for the tourism industry. It'd be good for the construction industry. It'd be good for the service industry. It'd also ease the squeeze on the cost of living and create more housing and more homes for young families who want to live in the centre of town. In addition, because it is in the centre of town, you have reduced stress on parking. You have reduced environmental pressures. We avoid the urban sprawl, but instead some brown cardigan wearing clown in the back office of DEFA says, nuisance building, it's a beautiful heritage. Well, maybe he looks at it once every 3 months.
With elbow
the thing is, there's a solution for this. When you look at what Historic England do with some of their conversions of derelict buildings, they build buildings within buildings, and there's a way of doing it. And the other thing that needs to remember is that a lot of these landlords, people that own these properties, they are quite capable of making a statement by being able to afford to just sit and watch these things decay, and leaving them as a monument, as a symbol of all that is wrong with Manx planning, with Manx attitude to development, with Manx attitude to progress. Because, I know that guy that owns it. He wanted to do something really good, high quality, something that would have been a legacy for another 150 years on that site. And it gets to the stage where they stop investing in Isle of Man properties and trying to take things forward because they're getting nowhere. And people think that high net worths get an easy ride with planning this, that, and the other. Maybe some of them do, but not all of them do. Not all of them do. And this is where things have got to change and change rapidly, because I've said to people at what they call it, DFE in the past, they're rapidly losing the goodwill of those high net worths that have come to live here. And more, they're all capable of actually just shutting up shop of their £2 million house or whatever, and going and living in a more friendly environment in Portugal or some other low tax jurisdiction. And this is what will happen if they're not very careful. They're rapidly losing a lot of goodwill.
Indeed, and we've hit the 50-minute mark, boys, so I think we'll wrap it up. But just a message out to the viewers: thanks for supporting, commenting and subscribing. Please, add to the comments box and we can pick up on things next week. Take a look at the Tynwald question paper on Tuesday. It's an absolute belter. A lot of things that are mentioned there aren't reported widely, and look at the MHKs who are really putting the government to task in these difficult times. Now, I'm just going to finish on a sad note. We just had some news in the box there from one of the contributors that there's actually been a death reported through COVID at Nobles Hospital. So our condolences go out to everyone connected with that. So on that note, Derek, we'll leave you for the weekend.
Yeah, that's very sad news. That foreseeable and not unexpected, but still, from where we were a few weeks ago, terribly sad. Thoughts are with you, folks. It's the roughest of times at the hardest of times, and I hope that some good comes out of it, because it's just the worst of news. I'm really sorry to hear that. Bit of a downer for the weekend, really.
Michael.
Look, unreservedly, my thoughts and my prayers go out to the family. It's just so, it's just so frustrating. It's a hopeless feeling for me to hear of this, and it's, I can imagine the grief, and I don't have anything else to say. So.
Okay, everyone, just observe the rules this weekend. Keep safe. Your social distancing. Be sensible, and look, we can get through this. We'll be hopefully back to normal later in the year. So, thank you. We'll catch up again.